Well, thank you so much, my dear friend. Good to be with you today.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Important day today because my dear friend and your friend, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was just with the president. This is 732nd day of the war on terror and Gaza, the hostages in the tunnels, and anti-Semitism is incredibly important because, by the way, that wasn't brought up today at the White House. No one brought up the word anti-Semitism, but that's the center of gravity because here's the truth. What's happening in Gaza is a business. Terrorism is a business, and it's a profitable business. It's the only business in the world you don't pay for commercials. You get them for free. Now, all the family-owned corporations called countries in the Middle East are thugocracies that have supported terror and have resisted the Palestinians, did not want the Palestinian problem solved because they needed an enemy to have an army and to deflect against their own hypocrisy. So this is a very interesting dynamic because if you just take one country, Qatar has been funding terror since October 7th. They've been pouring cash into Hamas in spite of the fact they put $200 million in before October 7th. So the anti-Semitism is a critical component of this entire Pandora's box.
I couldn't agree more, and I would like to try to identify the three separate rivers of anti-Semitism, if you will, that I think are converging in a very diabolical way. One you just mentioned, the anti-Semitism coming out of the House of Islam. It's in the name of a radical Islamic ideology. It targets the Jews, but it's also worth noting, I think, that the radical Muslims have allies in the West, the cultural left, which has become de facto anti-Semitic and which is allied with the radical Muslims against Israel. Now, these are very strange bedfellows, right? Because what's the commonality, let's say, between like some LGBTQ group on Columbia University and radical Muslims? Those two groups would not inhabit each other's worlds very well, but they have a common enemy. And I think their enemy is Israel, their enemy is Judaism, their enemy is Christianity, their enemy is Western civilization. In some ways, their enemy is the God of Abraham.
Well, their enemy is in fact God, because the godless humanists kill the soul. The terrorists kill the body. So they're partners in crime. I've written 117 books, and the vast majority of them on anti-Semitism. I wrote a classic on Jimmy Carter, the liberal left and world chaos. His attorney called me and said, if you publish it, we'll sue you. And then they called the networks and said, if you have him on, the president won't be on. Jimmy Carter orchestrated the overthrow of the Shah of Iran. I met with President Giscard d'Estaing. He told me at the Guadeloupe summit, Carter told me he's going to put Gandhi in power and he's going to bring human rights to Iran. His name is Khomeini. He said he was funding it through the NSA, funding Khomeini through the NSA. I met with all of the principal people, Hausner, General Hausner, Ambassador Sullivan. Farah Pahlav told me, Carter comes to our house on the Persian New Year with Rosalynn and says, you will release political prisoners. You will give freedom of religion, freedom of press, allow Khomeini back into the country. If you don't, no replacement parts for your helicopters or your planes. Now, the Shah said to Farah, if I do what he says, the Russians will invade Afghanistan, Iraq will attack us, there'll be Islamic revolution, and who knows what horror will come upon the earth.
You know, Mike, my take on this is the following, that there are all these people who are now complaining, oh, we give $3.8 billion of aid to Israel. This is how I look at it. The United States not only does not know how to fight radical Islam, Look at our terrible record. You just started with it, right? Jimmy Carter pulls the Persian rug out from the Shah. We get Khomeini. We give radical Islam control of a major state. Now, fast forward to 9/11. Right after 9/11, we go to Afghanistan. We pulverize the Taliban. We chase them out of town. But guess what? They're back. So that's turned out to be a long-term failure. Iraq, we know, was a big mess. Obama tried to turn over Egypt to the Muslim Brotherhood. So our record, the United States' record of fighting radical Islam, you'd have to say is kind of a C+, and that's giving it a high grade. Now, Israel knows what they're doing. They're able to fight terrorism in Yemen. They can fight it in Iran. They're chasing it down in Qatar. They are fully up to the task. And they look at the strike on the Iranian nuclear weapons. I mean, the United States loans a B-2 bomber for 24 hours, guarded by some fighters, and then we're out of it. So was that good for Israel? Yes, but it's even better for us. So I'm just looking at it cynically in terms of return on investment, ROI, as the guys like to say. I think we're getting a fantastic deal for the pennies or the relatively small amount of money we put into Israel. They're doing our dirty work for us over there.
It's true. September 23rd, 1980, I'm at the home of the founder of Israeli intelligence, Isaac Harel, with the senior advisor, Begin Reuben Hecht. I said, and by the way, Reagan, who you worked with, was running against Carter, who was ahead in the polls. And I said to Harel, do you think terrorism will ever come to America? He said, America has the power, but not the will. The terrorists have the will, but not the power. All of that can change with time. Arab oil buys more than tents. You kill a fly and rejoice. We kill one and 100 come to the funeral. Felix is not a cat. The first terrorist attack will be New York City and its tallest building. And then I said to Harel, what about Sadat? He said, we saved his life 3 times, but the Muslim Brotherhood will kill him at an inopportune time. Then I said, lighter question, who do you think is going to win the election? He said, when Ronald Reagan puts his hand on the Bible, the hostages will be released. The moment Ronald Reagan's hand on the Bible, my phone rang. It was a senior advisor of Begin, Reuben Hecht. He said, Harel's a prophet. Here's what we didn't know. Cyrus Vance was negotiating with the Algerians to buy them back. He offered $1 billion, $1.5 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion, 4:21 a.m., the morning of the inauguration, Jimmy Carter wire transferred $7.9 billion from the Federal Reserve to the Bank of England with 20 cooperating banks, including Chase, to buy back the hostages. So there's been, the record for America is diabolical. I mean, if you just take 911, Sheikh Abdul Rahman, mastermind of the first attack, 23 boxes, they wrote irrelevant religious stuff, the FBI wrote. By the way, he was the Muslim Brotherhood fellow cleric who was involved in the assassination of Sadat. We brought him into the United States and said, you know, it's okay. They're going to like us. We need to be nice to these people. So it is an ideology and it's a belief system, but it's now translated all over the board. I mean, you've got Tucker Carlson, a talking head right now, coming out with anti-Semitic statements like his latest one, saying that Jesus was just criticizing the Jews and the Jews killed Jesus. Well, that violates everything I believe about theology, that Jesus gave his life. And oh, by the way, do you know how many Jews were crucified by the Romans? 250,000. I told it to Mel Gibson. He showed me the movie before he ran it. And I said 250,000 Jews were crucified by the Romans, but only one rose for the dead. That was supposed to be the final words on the screen at the end of the Passion of the Christ. But his team talked him out of it because he said Arab countries won't show the film. Wow. There is an ideological war going on here.
Yeah, and I think this
hard.
We have been used to now for a generation the anti-Semitism of the political left. I think what's disturbing me a great deal, and many others, you too, is this anti-Semitism from the right. And this anti-Semitism, I think, is, in a way, it's disguised because Tucker will say, I'm just raising questions. But what are his questions? Like, should we have allied with Hitler against Stalin in World War II? And there's a whole bunch of young people who don't know a whole lot. It's that war is too far in their memory. They have historical amnesia. So they're like, wow, maybe we should have done that. I mean, just absolutely poisonous type of rhetoric. And then, of course, this idea, are the Jews truly descended from the ancient Israelites? Well, yeah, duh. I mean, the Jews scatter all over the world. What is Tucker saying? Some other Jews snuck in and impersonated the first group of Jews? I mean, this is just like madness. But I think, unfortunately, it's done by, I don't blame the young people who are suckers for this. A lot of them are angry, they're disjointed, they have other issues in America. But I do blame the Pied Pipers of anti-Semitism because I do think that they know better.
Well, if you just go back to the church in Germany, J. Oswald Chambers said, they love the chancellor. From the largest church to the smallest, they say, God sent the chancellor. The trains run on time. They have swastikas on all of their altars. So the church, birthed out of the Great Reformation, bought into this. And oh, by the way, why did they buy into it? Because of a damnable doctrine by Constantine called replacement theology, where Constantine took the gospel, hated the Jews, went to the temple of Venus and made it the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. He forbid the church to associate or do anything with the Jews. He rejected the Passover. He didn't want anything to be associated. And oh, by the way, he emulated the sun god. So he decided no services on Saturday like the Shabbat. So here was the architect. And oh, by the way, he also did it on St. Peter. The church did not venerate St. Peter. They venerated Jesus as the head of the church. St. Peter was not the head of the church till Constantine. So this guy comes up with this theology that Jews are the synagogue of Satan. And everything is canceled to the Jews. And that belief system, that cessation theology, has crept its way into the thinking process of people today, like Tucker Carlson and individuals like him. And it's a terrible dilemma that we're facing right now, because people are believing this stuff to be true.
Yeah, what they're trying to do is take the New Testament and kick out the Old Testament as if the New Testament is not engrafted on the old one. I mean, the whole idea of the New Testament is that we as Gentiles are spiritual Israelites. We are sort of engrafted onto the tree. I also think of it kind of this way, and I haven't heard this quite put this way, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. We are, the Trinity is based on the idea that there's a Father, there's a Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now, obviously, the Old Testament focuses on the works of the Father. The New Testament focuses on the works of the Son. It's almost as if the Tucker Carlsons of the world are trying to abolish the first person of the Trinity, keep the second and the third, and so reduce the Trinity from 3 people to 2. I mean, this would be the most abominable type of Christian heresy, and yet here it is masquerading as true Christianity.
It's true. But if you take anti-Semitism and you say, how long has it been going on? I mean, you met with the prime minister, which he and I are cherished friends for 45 years now. I'm actually the person who got him his job. When he was grieving his brother's death on the 4th of July, 1980, I prayed over him this prayer. Jonathan loved David. You love Jonathan. Out of the ashes of your despair will come strength from God, and you'll be the prime minister of Israel. The next day, I met with Menachem Begin. I told him the prophecy and said, give him a job. He did in the government. But his father wrote a book on the Spanish Inquisition, a classic, Benzian. And the premise of there were 250,000, they called it morons or convertos in Spain. These were Jews that were forced to convert to Christianity or die. And one of them, his name was Columbus. Well, Ferdinando and Isabella had a problem. They were fighting the Moors in Granada, the Muslims. They were running out of money. So they went to the Pope and they said, the Jews, the convertos, have money. The convertos have money, the noblemen, the merchants. Can we do an inquisition? Will you canonize it? And we'll split the money between the Catholic Church and us. He agreed. So they began having religious services. And as they ripped their intestines out, as they put them in the rack, trying to get them to confess, maybe you're celebrating the Shabbat. You claim to be a Christian, but maybe you're celebrating the Shabbat or the Feast of Esther. Confess it. And we'll forgive you of your sins, dear brother. And so this was the hell. And by the way, Columbus was one. I wrote 2 books on this. He said, I'm going to find a vast land that'll be the home of Christianity and a refuge for the Jews. And he sailed on the day of the destruction of the temple. But this was anti-Semitism. I came from a Russian background. I was named after my great-grandfather, Rabbi Mikhail Kass-Nelson, who was burned to death in his synagogue with 2,000 Jews. The cantor rabbi was Shimon Peres's grandfather. He was his hero and Talmud teacher. He was the cantor rabbi. My great-grandfather was the chief rabbi of the synagogue. My mother told me Christians kill Jews. Christians hate Jews. Jesus died, don't dig him up. Now here's the problem. My father was a professing Christian. He had a Thompson Chain Bible. He went to church every Sunday. But every Friday night, he walked to the Twilight Cafe and got drunk. He'd come home around 2 to 2:30 in the morning, sit my mother down in a chair at the bottom of the stairs, slap her in the face and call her a Jewish whore, saying, you had an affair with a Jewish man. That's a bastard. It's not my son. That's me. He never called me son. He never said, I love you. He never affirmed me. He abused me violently from the age of 4. At 8, he almost killed me, stripped me naked, beat me with extension cords almost to death, threw me in a canning cellar. At 11, he strangled me and left me for dead in my own dried vomit when I tried to defend my Jewish mother. So this is a guy that went to church every Sunday. They called him Brother Bob, but he hated Jews. He used to say, the Jews are running the country and the blacks are ruining it. So that's the basis of my life call to defend Jews, because I'm a victim of anti-Semitism.
You know, I think this anti-Semitism, it comes straight out of hell, and I interpret it this way, and this you'll find this in my new film, which is called The Dragon's Prophecy. It's this, that you have an eternal war going on between God and Satan. And I don't just mean the Garden of Eden. I'm talking about going back to the very beginning, the rebel angel in heaven, and the primordial clash between good and evil. Now, the point being that Satan is not powerful enough to defeat God. He can't overthrow God. And so what does he do? He always picks on the things that God cherishes or values. And his idea is that if I can ruin them, then I will get the last laugh on God. And I think this is the meaning of the Genesis 1, the Garden of Eden. Why does the serpent target Adam and Eve? Not because he's got any grievance with Adam and Eve. His grievance is with God. And his point is, if I can corrupt Adam and Eve, then ha ha ha, I've taken God's cherished creation. And I think for the same reason, if the Jews are the people of God, it makes total sense that Satan would go, let me destroy these people. Let me push them out from the river to the sea. I'm going to take God's promise to the Jews. I'm going to invert it. And not only that, I'm going to take the site of Solomon's temple, later rebuilt under Herod, and I'm going to find a way to stick a dome on top of that, a victory arch of Islam. I'm going to stick an Al-Aqsa mosque right there. I'm going to occupy the holiest place in Judaism and Christianity. So if you're looking for the prime root of anti-Semitism, I think we find it right there.
I think you're right. It's a battle between darkness and light. And the prime minister is right. But the prime minister has told me that Israel, Christian Zionism, predates Jewish Zionism. He said the state of Israel was birthed because of Christian Zionists. He's in Europe and in the United States. So the hatred is not just to the Jews, it's to the Christians also. We saw that in Germany by Hitler. He despised them as much as he despised the Jews. So you're right. The root of it is a spiritual battle, and Israel's the firewall. You know, Menachem Begin told me something. I was an insider in his cabinet, and he told me something. He said, we are a proxy of the United States to deter communism. Now, Israel is a proxy of the United States to deter radical Islam and terrorism. And they're the only proxy. The United States is not going back into the Middle East to fight a war because we haven't won any wars in the Middle East. We've lost them all. And so Israel is the firewall for the United States. And the radical left doesn't believe that the war on terror can be won. They believe we need to apologize. These are little George Washingtons that just need a little bit of tolerance and understanding and funds and education. And we're the ones that should feel guilty. We should feel guilty. And so this self-loathing and appeasement ideology, which of course is paramount in the universities, poisoned the young people, got Charlie Kirk killed for speaking the truth. And this is the real battle we're fighting. It's an anti-Semitic ideological battle, and it's subtle. The Holocaust didn't begin in the camps. It began in the universities, and it began in the churches.
Absolutely. I think for people in the West who don't understand the way in which Israel and America are in this together, the radical Muslims understand perfectly. I mean, when they use the rhetoric of the little Satan and the great Satan, they're telling you their understanding of the matter, right? Israel is a proxy, like you say. Israel's the little Satan. They want to get rid of Israel, but that's not the end of their objectives. Their real objective is the great Satan from their point of view, and that's us. So when you look at global jihad, it's not confined to Hamas. I'm sure that jihadis waking up in Egypt and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, they're not worried about the Palestinians, but what they are worried about is taking control of the Muslim world, imposing Sharia, infiltrating the West, gaining power in Australia and Canada and Europe, infiltrating the United States, taking over suburbs, taking over school boards, getting elected to office a la Ilhan Omar. There is a global project underway here, and I'm afraid that the guys on the right, like Tucker Carlson, who are going after Israel, are in a sense propping up, supporting, backing up the Hamas guys. The proof of this, my wife was looking at Tucker's Instagram and she goes, it is completely chock full of Hamas sympathizers. So these are not like young conservatives with like honest questions. This is like the Hamas lobby. And if you say anything against Tucker, all the Hamas people come up against you. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm assuming Tucker is well aware of this new constituency that he's lining up behind him. But it's not the best sort of people. I'm sure these are not the kind of people he wants to go to tea with.
Well, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money pouring in to these organizations from Qatar, and some of it's direct, some of it's through second or third parties. Listen, I met with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in the Warwick Hotel for an hour in his room, former president of Iran. And I brought the Fox News Network in because they couldn't get an interview. And I said to him, I heard that Zionists live to be 82 and Iranians 62. Why the disparity in age? Oh, he said, that's a scientific question. He said, the Zionists take rats. They put poison in them. They put them across the Persian Gulf. They infect our crops, we eat the food, and we die 20 years younger. I said, is this a joke? How do they teach the rats to swim that far? And then he said to me, I spoke at the UN, and for 26 minutes, nobody blinked. And a green light filled the room. The Mondai was there. Now, when I met with him, he kicked out all the politicians, and all the clerics put their hands up like this and were praying to the Mondai to empower him. Now, you'd put somebody in a mental institution and talk like this. But here's the president of Iran. By the way, he said to me, if you want to understand all this, you need to read the book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. What? What? Well, they believe all this. This nut job believes, as the mullahs do in Iran, they're going to usher in the 12th descendant of Muhammad, the Mahdi, through an apocalypse, through a mushroom cloud. And they have to drop it on the little Satan in order for the whole world to bow their knee to Islam. Now, those in the West are clueless, like the world was during Hitler's time. He told them what he wanted to do. They didn't believe him until 61 million people were dead.
Mike, I appreciate this conversation, and I'm also excited to share with your audience my new film, The Dragon's Prophecy, which tries to bring an enlarged, like, biblical perspective to situate all this stuff going on in the world. One of the points it makes is that the battle between Israel and Hamas is a kind of weird recreation, even a resurrection of the ancient battle between the Israelites and the Philistines. Now, not to say that these are the same people, they're actually not, but they do have the same name, and remarkably, they use the same tactics. And one of the points that we show is you have Samson, the biblical hero, who represents the strength of Israel, and Samson is captured by the Philistines, who, by the way, occupy Gaza. They occupy Philistia, which includes the city of Gaza. They drag Samson to Gaza, and they blind him. They blind him kind of in the way Israel was blinded on October 7th. And the Bible says that people said, strip Samson, take his clothes off so that he may entertain us. And wow, right after October 7, hostages are paraded, they're stripped down to the waist, and they're celebrating Allahu Akbar. So in a weird way, you could say that Samson is the first hostage of Gaza. I think there's a pressing need today to go beyond just the political debate, bring in the moral debate, the battle between good and evil, the perspective of the Bible. So I try to do all these things in this new film, and I'm delighted and really hopeful that the pastors and others who follow you will check it out.
And I want to encourage them, you pastors, to do just that. I watched it. It's great. What you've done in producing it is astonishing. And of course, the prime minister's in it. And it's moral clarity. It's moral clarity. It just articulates the core issues in a way people can really digest. Very important film.
Well, the beauty of films, most of my early career, Mike, I was, an author. I would write books, give speeches, but we're moving into a visual culture where you have to not just argue things or tell people about things, you have to show them. We also show them some scenes of October 7th, which, as you know, were not filmed by Hamas. I mean, not filmed by Israel, they were filmed by Hamas. And so the film begins, it's almost like you're on a motorcycle, you have a GoPro, and you're going into Israel over the fence along with the attackers. I mean, this is a way of telling people that you need to begin with October 7th, and all that happens subsequently has to be seen in the context of that original attack. Really very much in the same way, if you want to discuss the Pacific War in World War II, you kind of have to begin with Pearl Harbor.
And pastors, this is why it's so important. We're talking about anti-Semitism today. A lot of the scenes, I was there in the very spots where you shot the scenes. I had the cell phone in my hand that you referred to when he called his mother and father and said, I just killed these Jews. I have the phone. I had that cell phone. They taught the children, and they still do, that Jews have horns and tails and are the seed of Satan. And the rocks cry out, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. So the vast majority of Palestinian children and adults now have been taught this ideology since kindergarten.
You know, we started out talking about Trump and the peace plan, and I think Trump, in a very well-intentioned way, wants to give the people of Gaza another option. It's like, listen, you are war-torn, you are reduced to despair, many of you have been indoctrinated, fanaticism is all you know, death is all you know. But what if we offer you a clean apartment? And what if you can get a job? And what if you can live safely? And what if we can clean up the place? And what if you can even envision prosperity in the next year or 5 years? Quite honestly, Mike, I don't know if these people will take it. I don't know if they are so twisted and so out of it that even when you offer them a kind of clean path, they're going to still choose the darkness. But at least Trump deserves a lot of credit for envisioning a better future and trying to offer it to them.
I'm close to the Egyptians in leadership in Cairo, and I told them yesterday on the phone, listen, it'll take 5 years of re-education, no social media, no television or radio, and you're going to, the Saudis, by the way, are doing it. I met with the Crown Prince, MBS, he's re-educating them in Saudi Arabia. You've got to control all the mosques and all the messaging for 5 years to flush out all this craziness out of their mind. And by the way, it has to come out of the PA too. Because
you know what you're talking about, really. I mean, remember in the 40s, this was called denazification, right? It was, you have to rebuild Japan and Germany on a completely new foundation. Those things were successful. This is probably going to be as difficult, maybe more difficult than that, because Germany, in a sense, had Western roots. These are people who are appealing to their very God. It's like, we're doing the will of Allah. It's really hard to talk someone out of that.
And oh, God have mercy if we let them out of Gaza, because we've seen what they've already done to Europe. The last thing we want is them here.
That's right. I think that is exactly right. I live in Texas, you know, a red state, and yet in Houston and Dallas, the proliferation of the mosques, I mean, it's really a sight to see. It's quite clear to me that although we're noticing this now, this is a project that began, 30 years ago. And I believe there's a Muslim Brotherhood document that kind of lays it all out. It's like, listen, we don't just need the military jihad, but we also need financial jihad. We need political jihad, educational jihad. So all these different types of jihad blend together in a kind of multi-pronged strategy for a global caliphate.
Listen, I debated the FBI director who was over the Holy Land Foundation when they existed. And I said, they're a terrorist organization. He said, no, they're not. And we did it. We did it on an ABC affiliate here in Dallas, Fort Worth. Well, they were a terrorist organization. So a lot of this is deception and blindness, but that's why your movie is so important, because we've got to shine the light on truth and focus on the truth. It's going to take a while. It's a serious battle, but it's a winnable battle.
We're setting up a system, Mike, where churches are going to be able to do screenings, expose their audiences to the film in a very simple and easy way. So the website, if I can mention it, is the Dragon's Prophecy Film.com. It's in theaters a couple of days, but then October 6th and October 8th, the very next day it goes into streaming, and we're going to put a tab up there shortly, basically showing, for example, how pastors can bring this film to their congregations. They should watch it first, but this is going to be a powerful message to share with people and with churches around the country.
Saturday night showing at their church and invite the community to come.
Absolutely. That's the way to go. And I also want to make an effort to get this film to a lot of young people, because if you talk about people who are being seduced by the new anti-Semitism from the right, it's a lot of young people. It's a lot of young people with historical amnesia. They can't think back further than the Iraq War. And so as a result, they have stunted opinions, and they are being led by some very bad people, sort of Pied Piper style, right over the cliff, right over the precipice.
You and I both knew Bunker Hunt. And Bunker Hunt told me the greatest investment of my life was in the Jesus film. And that film was viewed by over 1 billion people throughout the world. So you can't underestimate the power of a movie, the influence it can have on impacting lives.
The movie really, in the end, it becomes its own message. So thank you, Mike, for helping to get this word out. You're reaching people that I wouldn't normally reach in my own orbit. And so I'm very grateful to you for having this conversation and for sharing the message.
I'm honored and thank you for all you're doing.